Your hands remember everything. You grab a jar lid, twist, and nothing happens. You try again. Still nothing. So you reach for a towel, get better grip, and finally it gives. You barely think about it, but somewhere in the back of your mind, you did notice. A landmark study published in the Journal of Renal Nutrition found that adults over 60 who rely heavily on table salt are dramatically accelerating the decline of kidney filtration capacity, often without a single warning symptom until significant damage has already occurred. If you have been salting your food the same way for 40 years, this is happening in your body right now. Quick note, everything in this video is educational only. Always talk to your doctor before making any changes to your medications or supplements. There is one specific kitchen habit, something you probably already have at home, that can replace salt entirely and actually support kidney function at the same time. It costs almost nothing. I will explain exactly what it is, but first you need to understand what is actually happening inside your body, because without that context the fix will not make sense. Most people assume that salt is just a taste preference and that cutting back is simply a matter of willpower. Doctors rarely have time to explain the mechanism at a standard appointment, but here is what is actually going on. Think of your kidneys like a pair of precision filters on a water treatment system. When sodium levels rise too high, those filters have to work at full pressure, constantly, around the clock. Over time, the pressure itself damages the filter. The tubes inside your kidneys, called nephrons, begin to scar. Once a nephron scars, it does not come back. Research published in the American Journal of Kidney Diseases found that adults over 60 who consume more than 2,300 milligrams of sodium daily lose measurable kidney function at twice the rate of lower sodium peers. This means that if you are adding salt to most of your meals and you are over 60, there is a significant chance this pressure damage is happening quietly, right now. And the consequence is not abstract. It is why people in their late 60s start needing help with tasks they never thought twice about: carrying groceries, getting up from a chair, maintaining energy through an afternoon. The kidneys regulate more than just fluid. They regulate blood pressure, bone density, and red blood cell production. The good news is that the kidney is one of the most responsive organs to dietary change, and you do not need a prescription to start. If nobody in your life is connecting these dots for you, that is exactly why this channel exists. A quick subscribe means you will not miss what is coming next. Here is the part your doctor almost certainly did not explain to you, and it is the reason a standard blood test completely misses this. By the time your creatinine, or GFR, shows up as abnormal on a routine panel, you may have already lost 40% of your kidney filtration capacity. The damage is invisible until it is not. What you choose to season your food with right now is one of the few levers you still fully control. The first thing to understand is what I call the flavor without pressure principle. Your taste buds are not actually addicted to sodium. They are addicted to contrast. Sodium works by suppressing bitter notes and amplifying everything else. But certain herbs and acids do exactly the same thing through a different mechanism. And they do it without triggering that pressure cycle in your kidneys. Lemon zest is the simplest example. The citric acid in lemon activates the same taste receptor pathways as sodium. Start using the zest, not just the juice, of half a lemon on proteins, soups, and roasted vegetables. Aim to do this at least 5 days per week. Most people who do this for 3 to 4 weeks report they stop reaching for the salt shaker at the table. Flavor depth improves at around the 6-week mark as your palate recalibrates. But what most people do not realize is that relying on lemon alone actually blocks the deeper flavor layering that makes low-sodium cooking genuinely satisfying, and that is exactly what we are about to cover. Most people who try to cut salt grab one substitute and stop there. That single swap approach fails within 2 weeks because the palate gets bored. The trick is layering, and that brings us to the second thing. The second thing is what I call the umami foundation. Umami is the 5th taste, savory depth, and it is completely independent of sodium. Think of it like the bass note in music. You might not consciously hear it, but when it is missing, everything sounds thin. Nutritional yeast is the most kidney-friendly umami source available. It is low in potassium and phosphorus, which matters if your doctor has flagged those levels. And 1 to 2 tablespoons added to soups, sauces, or even scrambled eggs delivers a depth of flavor that makes you forget you removed the salt. Start with 1 tablespoon per day. Within 2 to 3 weeks, most people notice their food tastes richer overall, not just in the dishes where they added it. Energy and digestion often improve alongside this, because nutritional yeast is also a source of B vitamins, which support kidney cell function. Flavor satisfaction typically peaks at 4 to 6 weeks. This next one matters even more if you are over 65, because after that age, the window for making this change starts to narrow significantly. Most people living with this right now have no idea. They think it is just age. It is not. And there is a specific reason why. Let me show you. The third and most overlooked thing is what I call the mineral offset. When you remove sodium, your body does not simply adjust. It starts looking for other minerals to maintain its internal balance. If you do not consciously replace those minerals, you experience what feels like fatigue, brain fog, and mild muscle weakness. And most people assume that proves the low-salt experiment failed. It did not fail. It just had a gap. Magnesium is the mineral your kidneys use to regulate sodium excretion. Think of it as the traffic controller on the highway. When magnesium is low, sodium traffic backs up. Pumpkin seeds are one of the richest food sources of magnesium that are also genuinely kidney safe. A 1-ounce serving, about a small handful, delivers roughly 150 milligrams of magnesium. Aim for 1 to 2 ounces daily, either as a snack or ground into a powder and mixed into food. Within 3 to 4 weeks of consistent intake, most people notice that their salt cravings decrease on their own, not through willpower, but because the underlying mineral deficit driving the craving has been addressed. Energy typically improves at 6 weeks. Sleep quality often follows. We are getting close to the part I mentioned at the beginning, the one habit that costs almost nothing. But first you need to understand this next piece, because without it, the habit will not make sense. I want to stop here for a second, because what I am about to tell you is the part most people who watch videos like this never actually hear. We have covered the flavor without pressure principle, using lemon zest to replace sodium's role in flavor contrast. We have covered the umami foundation, using nutritional yeast to replace the savory depth that salt creates. And I still have not told you about that daily habit I mentioned at the start. We are almost there. Now, here is what I mentioned at the very beginning, the one simple habit that costs almost nothing. Drink 1 cup of warm water with a 1/4 teaspoon of dried turmeric and a small squeeze of lemon first thing each morning, before coffee, before food. That is it. Turmeric contains curcumin, which has been shown in peer-reviewed research to reduce the inflammatory signaling that contributes to kidney filtration decline. The warm water and lemon prep your kidneys to flush efficiently at the moment they are most ready. Morning, when overnight metabolic waste is at its peak concentration. The total cost is under $2 a week. You can start tomorrow. Most people notice they feel cleaner through the morning within 1 to 2 weeks. Kidney-related inflammation markers, in those who get them tested, often show measurable improvement at 3 months. This one thing alone, if you take nothing else from this video, is worth paying attention to. Here is what changes when you put all of this together. You stop fighting salt with willpower and start replacing what salt was doing, contrast, depth, and mineral balance, through ingredients that support your kidneys instead of pressurize them. You wake up reaching for warm turmeric water instead of the salt shaker. You cook with lemon zest and nutritional yeast and a handful of pumpkin seeds, and you realize, about 6 weeks in, that the food actually tastes better, more complex, more satisfying. And somewhere in that process, the jar lid gets easier, the afternoon gets longer. You carry the groceries yourself. Not because you forced anything, but because you quietly gave your body what it needed to keep working for you. If one thing in this video surprised you, a like tells the algorithm this information is worth sharing, and it helps reach the people who need it most. Subscribe for weekly guidance grounded in real research, not trends. And share this with someone you know who is over 60 and watching their salt intake. They may not know yet what is underneath that craving. Next week, a landmark study found that one common breakfast habit, practiced daily by millions of adults over 65, blocks the very nutrient that keeps your heart rhythm stable. The finding is not what anyone expected. You showed up today, you paid attention, and you left with something real. That is not nothing. That is exactly how this kind of change begins.